Welcome to another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. You're listening to a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State, featuring writer, poet, and musician Rick Pidcock. Now here's Rick.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
I suffered so much pain. I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
5 administrations, and we're still in the dark, this ad says. Call your congressmember and demand they release all the Epstein files. Go to worldwithoutexploitation.org. The Epstein controversy is continuing to tear the Republican Party and the MAGA movement apart, despite the fact that President Trump signed the bill on Wednesday to release the Epstein files. He posted on Truth Social, quote, Jeffrey Epstein, who was charged by the Trump Justice Department in 2019, not the Democrats, was a lifelong Democrat, donated thousands of dollars to Democrat politicians, and was deeply associated with many well-known Democrat figures, unquote. He talked about Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman. He said, quote, perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Jeffrey Epstein will soon be revealed, because I have just signed the bill to release the Epstein files, unquote. Then he finished by declaring, quote, this latest hoax will backfire on the Democrats just as all of the rest have. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Trump's sudden agreement to release the files comes as a surprise to many. Don't forget, we were just talking about how he brought Representative Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room to pressure her. And he's also been calling Marjorie Taylor Greene Marjorie Traitor Greene.
Watching this actually turn into a fight has ripped MAGA apart. And the only thing that will speak to the powerful, courageous women behind me is when action is actually taken to release these files, and the American people won't tolerate any other bullshit. That's where we are today. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people, whom we serve as representatives here in Congress, demanded that this vote happen, and they put more pressure on every single elected politician in this city than has ever been put on them. And today you are going to see probably a unanimous vote in the House to release the Epstein files. But the real fight will happen after that.
Thanks to the pressure being put on Congress by the public, the vote in the House was 427 to 1, and the Senate passed it through unanimous consent. But despite the almost unanimous decision, not everybody's on the same page here. Here was Speaker Johnson reacting to the Senate passing the bill without any amendments.
Any reaction to Leader Thune seeing the bill without adding amendments or changing it?
I am deeply disappointed in this outcome. I think I'm told I've been at the state dinner. I don't know. I was just told that Chuck Schumer rushed it to the floor and put it out there preemptively. It needed amendments. I just spoke to the president about that. We'll see what happens.
So do you think he may veto it? You say you spoke to the president?
I'm not saying that.
Is he supportive of it in its current form?
We both have concerns about it, so we'll see. I was standing there with the Crown Prince. We couldn't talk.
Are you frustrated in the majority leader? Are you upset with the majority leader?
And Trump has been taking his frustrations out on women in the media as well.
Sir, if there's nothing incriminating in the file,
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me. But he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax. And ABC's, your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep.
Who talks like this? Calling women piggies? Telling them they're horrible people? Claiming that they're being insubordinate? All because they're asking about the Epstein files, which is kind of their job as journalists? Notice how in the audio we shared earlier, Marjorie said, the real fight will happen after that. Because she knows there's more going on here than Trump's reluctant signature. But still, Trump did sign the bill. So why did he do that? Of course, he's acting like he's exposing all the sexual predators. So is he? Here's former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki explaining what's really going on.
Okay, I just want to be clear about a couple of things with Trump and the Epstein files. Because this notion that he's flipped and he's now open to them being released because he says he's okay with it going through the House and supports that in some degree is total BS. First of all, he could release the files if he wanted. He doesn't need any bill to be passing. He also sees the writing on the wall here because it's looking like dozens, if not 50, if not a veto-approved majority number of House members, House Republicans, are going to vote for this today. So there's that. Second is he knows there's no mechanism that makes it mandatory for Senate Majority Leader John Thune to bring this up for a vote in the Senate. And of course, it needs to be voted through the Senate as well, where they would need 60 votes. They'd need 67 for it to be veto proof. So that's another hurdle. The third thing is they've already announced they're going to reopen an investigation in a very BS way with a bunch of Democrats listed, not Trump listed, even though he's listed them more than anyone else in these files that were released last week. But point is, if they open an investigation, he could use the excuse that there's an open investigation so they can't access or can't release all the files. I'm sharing all this not to be a Debbie Downer, but just to be very clear-eyed about what he's doing right now. He's not saying, I'm for releasing the files. He could do that on his own. He just knows there's a bunch of hurdles, so he can save face by saying he's open and he's fine with the House vote.
So Trump isn't being the hero here. He hasn't had a sudden change of heart since his pressuring of Lauren Boebert and his calling Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor. But something is going to be released at some point. The questions are what is going to be released, and how should the evidence be interpreted? Here's how Trump says they're to be interpreted.
Enough. We've already given, I believe the number is 50,000 pages. 50,000 pages. And it's just a Russia hoax as it pertains to the Republicans. Now, I believe that some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, but they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all. And we'll see what happens. What I just don't want Epstein to do is detract from the great success of the Republican Party.
So if the files mention Republicans, then it's a Russia hoax. But if the files mention Democrats, they're totally reliable. Really? But of course, that's assuming the reports even mention Republicans. Because according to Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, in an interview on News Nation, the Republicans might not even be mentioned in them at all.
What I do want to talk about is I've been recently told the reason they're going to be releasing these things and the reason for the flip is that they're sanitizing these files. There's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it. That's what I was told by a pretty good source.
He's being told that they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it? Why? Even if they leave the Republican names in it, Trump says that's part of a Russia hoax. So either way, he's erasing or minimizing anything related to the GOP. So why would he do that? Could it possibly have anything to do with the fact that Mark Epstein also says there are things in those files that Trump doesn't want people to see about himself? So why would Trump be minimizing all of this if he really cares about survivors? If he really cares about women? And does he care about women given the way he talks to women in the media? Perhaps the truth can be most clearly recognized in the words of Megyn Kelly. Remember, as we mentioned on Monday's episode, she's stooped to minimizing what Epstein did as simply involving the barely legal type, because they were 15 and not 8. But here she is explaining her problem with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and as a result, ironically revealing what's really going on here.
A breakup between Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump. And I have to say, I don't like this at all. Just as we fell in love with MTG, she broke up with Trump. We did not fall in love with MTG because she started saying anti-Trump things. We just thought she was interesting. But she, at the same time, was getting interesting to like the ladies of The View and now CNN. And now I'm like, I don't know exactly what's happening here. She and Trump are fighting. Ugly. He calls her Marjorie Traitor Greene now. She's saying that these comments are endangering her life. And she did a thing that no conservative should do. I mean, truly just, it shouldn't be done. She went on CNN to rip on Trump / not other Republicans, but Trump. Ben Shapiro did it the other day, too, and got all sorts of blowback for it. Like, Republicans don't want to see their people on CNN. You know, it's one thing if you're Scott Jennings and you're taking on a table of Democrats fighting for Trump, but it's another to see, like, you go into the den of the enemy and start bashing your own team. So, and MTG is not dumb. So she did that for a reason. I don't totally understand it yet, but maybe it'll become clear.
She says you go into the den of your enemy and start bashing your own team. This is why hierarchy is a fundamentally flawed lens of interpreting the world through. It requires you to identify as a team and then build a tower that keeps your team members walled in, with each person put in their place. Then, when an authoritarian has absolute control and loyalty of his subjects within the walls, he can brand everyone on the outside as enemies or threats. On a side note, yes, I am saying he on purpose. This is also why I don't like metaphors about reconstruction. To me, when people say after deconstruction that you have to reconstruct in theological conversations, it feels like building another team tower. And I'm not interested in building more walls because it's too easy for those power over as well as insider and outsider dynamics to happen. And besides, when it comes to sexual abuse, there shouldn't be any teams. You should simply stand with the survivors. We need to switch to completely different metaphors for interpreting reality. Because the problem with interpreting reality through the lens of teams is that it considers everything in left and right categories, as if we're dealing with equal planes here. But the power dynamics of sexual assault or any dehumanizing violence toward others isn't a left-to-right dynamic, but a hierarchical dynamic of top-down authority and submission. The people who assault others are essentially saying they are entitled to be the emperors of another person's body. To interpret that situation in terms of teams causes all the cover-ups we're seeing today. You can't talk about it or expose an abuser because to discuss what they did is, as Megyn Kelly put it, to go into the den of your enemy and start bashing your own team. And in the meantime, people are being hurt. This is why it's been so important this year for those of us toward the left to name the abuses of leaders on our team. I've had to write multiple stories this year about Tim Whitaker of the New Evangelicals, about Peter Bell and the Sons of Patriarchy, about Laura Anderson. And there are other stories out there too. I know of one podcast network that removed a popular deconstruction podcaster last night due to sexual harassment. I'm not at liberty to share names, but it's been a theme this year that we've had to deal with people who would be considered to be on our team that are causing harm to women. Here's what everybody needs to understand. The women who are assaulted don't care about your team. Even if they're on your team, they don't care about the team to the detriment of their bodies, minds, and hearts. So rather than protecting our team, we need to be standing with and amplifying the voices of those who are being harmed. If there's a team that you're going to be on the team of those who are being harmed. So to close our episode, I'd like to give the final word to one of Epstein's survivors. In fact, this survivor voted for Trump. But for her own sake and for the sake of her sisters, she's choosing truth over team.
It is also not a hoax. We are here as American survivors of a man who used his wealth and power to hurt young girls and women. The world should see the files to know who Jeffrey Epstein was and how the system catered to him and failed us. Emotionally, this process has been distressing. First, the administration said it would release everything and then applauded President Trump for that. Then it fought to release nothing. Now that checks and balances of our democracy have worked and the bill is getting passed to release the files, we are hearing the administration say they intend to investigate various Democrats who were friends with Epstein. I beg you, President Trump, please stop making this political. It is not about you, President Trump. You are our president. Please start acting like it. Show some class, show some real leadership, show that you actually care about the people other than yourself. I voted for you, but your behavior on this issue has been a national embarrassment. It is time to take the honest, moral ground and support the release of these files, not to weaponize pieces of the files against random political enemies that did nothing wrong, but to understand who Epstein's friends were, who covered for him, what financial institutions allowed his trafficking to continue, who knew what he was doing but was too much of a coward to do anything about it.
That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be back with another episode on Monday.
This has been another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. The episode you've just heard is part of a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State. Be sure to follow BNG daily at baptistnews.com and subscribe to get notifications about future episodes. Baptist News Global is a national nonprofit news service that is independent, free, and faithful. BNG is supported by readers and listeners like you. Learn more at baptistnews.com.
This episode was produced and edited by Mac Bowles of TKG Communications, LLC, Dallas, Texas.